And welcome back to Heavy is the Crown. I am your host, Vector Lynn, joined with my co-host once again over Zoom, Nicole Retrograde.
Hello.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
A little excited
You don't
because
sound it.
I'm
A,
always excited.
a little excited.
Are you mocking me?
Yes.
Anyway, I'm excited today because after a long time of rumors and a delay, Shinedown's uh, Leave a Whisper, Us and Them, Sound of Madness, Amaryllis, Threat to Survival, Attention to Attention. Seventh studio album, Planet Zero, is released. And just like we did with Scoring the End of the Earth by Motionless in White, we will be doing a track by track listen of track by track reaction of this album. And now this album has a few interludes per se of like songs that are less than a minute. So we're gonna tack those on to the songs that come after those and just react to both those together rather than doing a little reaction on a 30-second interlude. How does that sound, Nicole?
Scrumptious.
What an interesting word.
I'm glad you say so.
Anyway, we're going to start off with our first two songs. The intro being called 2184, followed immediately up by No Sleep Tonight. You're familiar with that one, Nicole, aren't you?
I am nocturnal.
Whatever. Anyway, first two songs. Here we go. I'd say an interesting start to the album. And I'm not talking really about the song. I'm very hung up on the intro, the 2184.
Mm-hmm.
Because have you ever seen Stranger Things, Nicole?
But I have not.
Okay. Loki. I think that Loki would be the next best example.
That I have seen.
You know those like old time, like, you know, what was her name? Mrs. Time or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Clocksworth, whatever it was. What was
Yes. I don't recall.
Mrs. Minutes, that was it.
That sounds about right.
You know how she was like that 50s almost retro kind of character?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with those kind of like that era of commercials?
I believe so.
That's what the intro sounded like to me.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like a 70s, 80s kind of commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very interesting because that's not something we've seen in any of the singles released. I believe you've heard some of them. I don't know if you've been following this album as much as I have.
Yeah.
But the tone of this album isn't really a retro look. It's more of a look back on the past couple of years and what's going on. At least that's what Brent Smith, the frontman, said in one of the interviews he did. And so to have this kind of not glam rocky, but like chimey little chime, for lack of a better word, at the beginning is a very interesting way to start, in my opinion, based on what I've heard. And I'm interested to see how the rest of the album goes.
Mm.
And that was a 23-second clip. I haven't said anything about the song yet, but I'll let you go now.
No, I agree pretty much with the introduction as well. I just wrote, that it very much reminded me of like an 80s vibe, but it also sounded like an introduction to like an 80s kind of movie.
Right.
Or it almost kind of reminded me of like something that would play when you're on like a ride at like Disney or something like that. That's what it reminded me of.
Yes, very much agree. So I guess for the intro, I'll give a 5 out of... I feel like I can't even rate the intro because there was not much to go off of. But No Sleep Tonight, once again, felt a little lighter than the other singles that we heard, Planet Zero and Saints of Violence and Innuendo specifically. Daylight was more of a calmer song, so you can't really compare it to that. But it was interesting. Because, like, I don't know, I didn't love it at first, but the more times the chorus went on, it grew on me. But I wouldn't say so far it's my favorite on the album, based off of what I've heard so far. I understand it's track number 2, but that's just my thing. And I was able to see the message they were going for and stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. But overall, it was just nothing that really stood out to me about that song.
That's fair.
Your thoughts?
I also thought that this is also kind of gave me like an 80s vibe, but less.
Yes,
of,
I did
like,
hear that too.
Yeah, like a little different from the introduction, but definitely like 80s rock kind of vibe. And I too will not be getting any sleep tonight. I simply don't do that.
Of course you don't.
And I enjoyed the song.
I did too, but just not as much as I've grown to like other Shinedown songs, and that could just solely be because of I've had time to listen to them rather than this first time around.
Need it to
which
grow
is why
on me.
which is really my issue with reaction stuff. Like, a first reaction is good and all, but like, you really can't get your truest feelings on the song because sometimes you grow into a song.
We'll have to do an update later on. This is how I truly feel.
A year later, how do I feel about Planet Zero?
Well, I'll see you in a year from now.
Oh, I hope
If
I don't have
block
to see
you
you
by
in a
then.
year. What?
If I don't block you by then.
Anyway, 2184, feel like I can't rate because there wasn't much to go off of. No Sleep Tonight, 7 out of 10.
I don't know what I'm basing this off of because you are more of a well-known fan of Shinedown than I am, but I think I will give it a 6 of 10.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on to the first single and title track of the album, Planet Zero. And Nicole, I was going to say you go first to give your first reaction, but that is not the case, as you've heard this on Crown when we've played it several times, actually.
This is true.
So, yes, this is like when we reviewed Motionless's album. There are a few songs we won't be able to give our first impressions of because they would have already existed. But this song came out in January. Way, way long ago. 7 months.
Don't do that to me.
7 months.
Oh, goodness.
This album was originally supposed to come out in April or May. But because of a vinyl shortage, I believe, they pushed it back so everybody could enjoy the album at the same time, which I think was a very cool move.
Interesting.
But yes, I have heard Planet Zero before, several times. But I can say my first impression scared me a little bit. I wasn't too sure how I felt about this song when I first heard it. And I was going into it with, if this is the title track, I don't know how I feel about the rest of the album. I can say since then, it has definitely grown on me. It is a fun song to sing along to. And I really like it. And it's comparing it to Motionless in terms of first singles released. There's this theme of like this interplanetary thing that seems to be setting the theme of the album. We saw it with Motionless in White with Cyberhex. And they went, even in their on-stage presence and aesthetic, they went through this whole sci-fi change. They've had the armor on, the little lines painted on their face, all that kind of stuff, which was vastly different to their more gothic appearance from Disguise and beforehand. And this and Planet Zero seems to be the same thing for Shinedown, not only beating the title track, but also kind of setting the tone of the entire album with this metaphor of Planet Zero. This is where you give your opinion.
All right. Well, when I first heard this song, I thought it was really great. Again, this might be the first song that I've known by Shinedown, like knowing it was them.
Right.
And I really enjoyed it. And, you know, when you've played it, I liked that song as much as I wouldn't like to admit that I've liked stuff that you've introduced to me. I will say...
Baby. Represent.
Moving on. If I could think of any song that this reminded me of, in an interesting way, it reminded me of a song called Icky Thump by the White Stripes. And almost every time that I've heard this song, I think about that one. And it sounds like a harder version of that song. And so I really enjoyed that. Also, one thing that I don't know if I really picked up on with the whole theme is that I like that they had the countdown in the song. Because it, you know, reminds you of, like, you know, it makes me think of space travel and taking off and all that.
That was my thing too.
And I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like out of place elements of, oh, I associate that with something else and it's not something that I'd expect in a song.
Right.
Similarly, how there's like other like spoken pieces of like if someone has like a phone call or something. Just like an element that's different from like just how the song's been. I enjoy implementing that, so I realized that I really like having that in the song. And I also enjoy the visuals of like we're watching lyric videos, and I enjoy the cover art and all that kind of stuff.
I am glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about this lyric video specifically, and we'll probably mention elements of other ones later on depending on what they're like. But if you didn't know, throughout the promotion of this album, Shinedown created an alphabet, like a cipher code to go along. I don't know if you can see it. I'm pretty sure I'm sharing the screen right now. And so next to a lovely picture of Brent is the key for the code. And I don't remember exactly, but in the lyric video, in the background, they were flashing up some of these letters. And we would have to go back and maybe decipher them. Maybe they're spelling out something, or maybe they're just ambiance for like, hey, this code is going to be important throughout the album. Because I know I'm subscribed to text from them, and there's a lot of different things where like, go head to the cipher and decode this. I've never actually done it because as a kindergarten dropout, I still struggle with our normal English alphabet. So getting into another one would be a whole big thing. That being said, Planet Zero score for how I feel about it now and not first impressions. 9 out of 10.
I would actually have to agree on that. That's what I was going to give it.
I'm glad I can introduce you to something you like and have you agree on my score.
We're not talking about this.
Anyway, next up we have another interlude type song. So our next two songs will be Welcome and Dysfunctional You, which is how I feel working with you, Nicole.
Of course.
Nicole, the song's over. It's time to give your thoughts on it.
Oh, hi.
Hi, welcome back to the show. What did you think?
I thought this was good.
That's it?
No, that's not it. I was going to say that I enjoyed this song, and it doesn't. It's different from the other songs that we've heard so far, in my opinion, because it's a little bit of a more like tamer vibe and like a little more calmed down. But at the same time, I feel like that does help with, like, it seems like these lyrics are a little bit more like raw than the other ones.
Yes, that's the word I was looking
And
for.
it matches the vibe of that, so that you really can pay attention to the lyrics of this song. And I thought that that was a good match with the lyrics and the vibe of the song.
Very much agreed.
Also, I enjoyed again the aesthetic of the lyric video that went along with it, because
Yes.
I liked the like tape. I know 21 Pilots did that with yellow tape during the trench era of the music. They did a lot of that with the yellow tape, so I enjoyed that.
Yes. I was going to say, thank you for finding the right word for me.
Cool.
My first reaction to the song was, oh, it's very crass, with the opening lines being suicide, suicide, 1, 2, 3. But I realized that wasn't the right word as we listen more into the song. Because the song is really all about accepting yourself. That much is evident. And there was one line, I believe in the chorus, that, as much as I hate thinking of this person, reminds me of something one of our digital marketing people said, Kyle said, before we fired the trader. He had a tendency of saying something along the lines of, if we were all normal, we'd be boring. And I think that is the encompassing theme of this song.
Mm-hmm.
And I rather enjoyed that. It's a kind of a juxtaposition. It's talking about all this things that people probably wouldn't look too fondly on, like dysfunctional and stuff. We're using words like that. But at the same time, it's saying, accept that, because that's you and you are you. So I like the juxtaposed of the word choice, but also the message of the song.
I agree.
So overall, another 7 out of 10 for me. Because once again, this is another album where they put a much slower song than the previous ones so early in the album. Like we saw with Porcelain with Motionless in White.
I'm gonna say that I need you to stop reading my mind, because it's getting a little bit uncomfortable. For I too was going to give this a 7 out of 10.
Apologies. But I'm not going to stop. Anyway, welcome to, we need to talk about that little interlude. Are you okay?
What do you mean by that, Vector?
What?
Are you listening? Get out!
I mean, there's not much going on up there, so it's fine. Anyway, welcome we need to talk about too, because that didn't... Unfortunately, we got interrupted by an ad break on YouTube because I am slightly poor and cannot afford premium. But
Not me though, stay safe.
To me, it seemed like they didn't connect at all. In fact, it seemed like Welcome and 2184 connected. If you took out the songs between them. And I could be wrong. And I meant to mention this about Planet Zero 2. But I'm very certain that that's what played while Shinedown was walking out onto stage when I saw them live. It might be some kind of version of that. I don't know if it was that specifically, but it was very much that voice and some kind of speech like that, which I thought was cool. But once again, it's got that 80s Stranger Thing kind of tone to it.
Yeah, I definitely think the two match. The two, what are they called? Like
Interludes, I would call them.
Do match each other, and it did feel a little bit jarring, like the difference between that and then the song that played even before or after it. But it very much continued the vibe of you're on some sort of ride. Even if it's not like, Disney ride, it's like, a travel, like journey kind of experience.
I totally agree.
And it's interesting. It does take you back to that kind of like bit that they're creating for the album, but it is very different from the song that plays after it. I will say the Welcome tickled my brain a little bit.
In what way?
The sound of it.
Yes.
I don't know how else to describe it. It just went like this.
I understand.
That's what I've got.
And I want to point out that this interlude thing is not exactly new to Shinedown. In their 2018 album, Attention, Attention, they did an intro where it was like all this heavy machinery and then somebody coming in and just like sitting down and stuff. Like you heard like a chair scraping, a door opening, all that kind of stuff. And then they ended the album on that too, of like the person from the intro being like relaxing and just like taking it all in, because that was a concept album. I also want to mention one last thing real quick about Welcome, because it seemed so jarring with the song that followed it. It reminded me of Black Veiled Brides. It was their 2012 album Wretched and Divine, where throughout the album they had these interludes called fear transmissions that pushed the story forward, which makes me wonder if Planet Zero is also somewhat of a concept album / rock opera like Attention, Attention or Wretched and Divine was.
I mean, not even being able to compare it to that, that's what I understood.
Yes.
I figured it was kind of going along that kind of vibe.
Well, we'll find out soon because we have one more song and then another interlude. So we'll cover that soon. But right now we're moving on to the next song, Dead Don't Die. All right. Now we're getting back into Shinedown. I like that one a lot. That one, so far out of what we heard, was the most in line with Planet Zero, excluding the interludes. But out of the four actual songs we've heard, that one is the most in tune with what Planet Zero gave us, at least instrumentally. The lyrics here felt connected more with Dysfunctional You, but in a different font, as you would say.
That I would.
So I liked it a lot. A spoken pre-chorus is something I don't think I've ever heard in a song before. I've heard spoken bridges, like in Wolf in Sheep's Clothing by Set It Off, and in Face to Face and This Is Your Sign, both by Citizen Soldier. But having it twice within the same song as the pre-chorus, I think is something I have yet to discover, and I really like it.
I like that as well. I thought it was an interesting choice, and I felt like they executed it nicely.
Yes.
And that contributes to what I mentioned when we were talking about... Oh, now I'm forgetting. That's great. Anyway, using elements that aren't typical of songs where you include spoken word.
Are you referring to what you said about Motionless, where they skipped his voice?
No, I just mentioned it here in another one.
Oh.
When it was like the countdown. I think that was it. No, Planet Zero.
Yes.
I like the utilization of elements like that because I mean, you see it a little bit more commonly than like it's not like nobody does stuff like that, but I like the elements of, you don't expect spoken word in a song
right
of this
often.
vibe, not too often, and I thought they did that well. Also, I did also compare it to Planet Zero, the single, because again, coming into this album, only really basing it off of knowing that one song, a song like this song is what I expected coming
Right.
into it. And I really enjoyed it.
Yes. And one last thing I wanted to say. Do you know what the word reprieve means?
Pass.
I'll take that as a I don't either. And that's why I bring up this point. So, reprieve, looking it up, means cancel or postpone the punishment of. And that is a word that I would bet not most people know the definition of, at least the most average people. And I say that because I admire them
Because you're
for
incredibly
using
average.
jokes on you. I'm below average. I'm different. But I say that because so often in my writing, I wanted to use big words or words you don't typically hear in a song because it worked with the rhyme and it worked with the story. However, I was always dissuaded from using them because I'm like, these aren't typical words you would hear in a song. And so for them to have reprieve, which I wouldn't know going into it, and you didn't know going into it, and like I said, I bet a lot of people wouldn't know going into it, makes me realize that you shouldn't be afraid to do things just because they haven't been used in the songs you heard of. And because of that, I'm putting my score for Dead Don't Die at an 8.5 out of 10.
Understandable. I will be giving it an 8 out of 10.
Interesting.
I will
go ahead.
also do a quick comment that it's kind of interesting that you bring that up because there's a bunch of songs that I've listened to, just in my lifetime where I will now hear certain words that I have not heard before the song. And of course, I'm forgetting them off the top of my head, but I'm going to credit most of them to Panic at the Disco, where I feel like they've used a bunch of big words that I didn't know at the time. And now every time I hear a word that I learned from their song, I automatically think about them music. And so maybe it's a good thing to put in some words that people don't know, because then forever they will associate that word with the song that they first heard it through.
Yes, I would agree with what you said. Same with Panic at the Disco. Top example for me, off the top of my head, would be hopes. I was unfamiliar with what that word was before, and I think you have a similar story. Same song, actually. I don't think you've ever heard the word high before.
What do you mean by that?
You're short. Anyway, time to move on to the next song. It is another interlude. So we have Standardized Experiences followed by America Burning. Here we go. So before we get to...
Good job, Vector.
Shut it, Nicole. Nobody can see the screen share.
Vector's fighting with YouTube and advertisements because
for some reason, when you put a playlist on, Chrome deteriorates as it goes on. I don't
imagine using Chrome.
I'm not. What am I going to use? Microsoft Edge?
No.
Exactly. Anyway, I will say this before we even get to the interlude or the song. I've noticed between this and even with The Motionless, number one, that they put out a lyric video for every song, which I love, but I've never seen that really done before with albums. I've only seen like official audio or visualizers. To put out an actual lyric video for each one is very cool, and to see that 2 albums have done it, it's almost like they want to make my job easier for editing. Anyway, I noticed there's a lot going on in a lot of these lyric videos. There's just like so much coming at your face all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really a big deal, but for this one, it was a little hard to take it all in. Like this one felt a little more dizzying than something like the Planet Zero's lyric video. But that's just on the visual elements as a whole. Going back to standardized experiences, it feels like all these interludes are a separate story from the album. I see what they're doing, and they are pushing something hidden underneath all the tracks, and they do fit to where they've been placed. But it feels like they should be listened to separately, one after the other, without music in between. Especially since they all have that string of 80s Stranger Things vibes.
I feel like that's true, and I like how it's kind of like woven between the album, though, because I think the point of the interlude is it's trying to distract the listener from the meanings behind the lyrics of the songs.
Interesting point.
I feel like, again, going on that theme of like you're kind of on like some sort of journey, I feel like it's kind of like if the songs versus the interludes were like characters, it's like the protagonists are the actual band that's doing the singing of the songs, and the interlude is kind of like the antagonist and the enemy, kind of like distracting the listener from what's going on. And I feel like that's incredibly prominent during America Burning, because
I was just going to say this song specifically
is about, the reality of like, the thought of the like American dream is kind of ironic, because America doesn't seem to be as much of this amazing powerhouse as it likes to paint itself to be. There's a lot of, the reality is there's a lot wrong with the country. No matter what your thoughts are on the country itself, you think that there's something going on, because there's a lot. And I feel like it's almost like the interlude's kind of like, no, look the other way. Like there's this journey going on, and everything's.
I do see that now.
It's fine. Just follow these instructions, and you'll be okay. Yeah.
I do want to bring up something about the interlude, because you showed me, while we were still doing the show live, you showed me an album, and I forget the name of it, but it had really interesting interludes like this, talking about like vision and sound and stuff like that. I forget the band or the name of the album. Is any of this ringing a bell?
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of How to Work a Room by Superette.
That is it.
I believe that's
was exactly what I was thinking of. I'm getting those vibes from it.
I was thinking that too.
Because of the weird voice and what you mentioned now, the whole distraction angle that this is taking, which could be why, if you look at it now, it's the track listing goes intro, song, interlude, song, interlude, song, which is America Burning, which we just listened to, and we have another interlude right after this. Yeah,
I think it's all placed very strategically.
Yes. And track listing, I don't think people give enough credit to track listing. And Adele mentioned this. Not that I listen to Adele. That's not music, of course, because there's no instruments. But Adele mentioned something, or actually was an activist on something, in where she got Spotify to remove the shuffle button on albums on Spotify. You could still shuffle an album if you would like, but that's no longer the default setting. And her reason was, we put the tracks in a specific order for a reason. And you can clearly see it here, like with what you just said with these interludes.
That's really interesting, because I believe, I do remember that, and I don't think I realized the change, because I don't use Spotify that often, but I know when I used to, it did kind of shuffle everything.
Right.
On their end, that might be a strategic move of oh, if you don't want to buy our premium version, you have to listen to it on shuffle and you don't
Right.
get the full experience. But
Well, they do that with playlist, I know.
yes, and that's why I usually use it on a computer rather than on mobile.
Right.
Because it does really take it away. Like the experience is different. There's albums that I've listened to for years. You know, example again, Panic at the Disco, their first album, A Phoebe Can't Sweat Out, is one of the songs that I know like the back of my hand. And then one time I think I listened to it on shuffle and it was kind of disorienting.
Right.
But that's another album that also has an introduction and an intermission. So, you know, if you start the album out with intermission, it's very off-putting.
Right.
But no, there's a lot of thought that goes into something like that too. And that's why I'm glad that, you know, with this album and our previous reviews, we've paid attention to like, oh, like you could tell when it's interesting when one song is, you know, you think it was placed like in a different spot or something like that.
Especially tracks that bleed into each other. And clearly track listing is very important because we just spent who knows how long talking about a 43-second interlude. We haven't even gotten to the actual song yet. But I will start off talking about America Burning with this. It is the red, right, white, and boom of this album so far.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you noticed that, but like in terms of just the instrumental tones, especially in the intro, very similar to Motionless in White's song. Mm-hmm. And also lyrics like, is this apocalypse now? Relates to scoring the end of the earth as a whole. And who doesn't love a parade with gasoline and grenades? That a line like that could easily have found its way into Red, White, and Boom by Motionless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like you said that they're like coming out of the pandemic album. Is that true?
In a sense, I think less about the pandemic specifically, more about everything just happening overall, and I think you can see it within this song specifically.
Yes, that's exactly why I asked that, because I feel like there's like depending on the artist or just the person in general, there's a lot of negative sentiment towards, like, you know, just the country overall and how everything in the pandemic was handled and just coming out of it. There's just obviously we're in a very, like, you know,
uncertain times,
unprecedented times. There's a lot of tension.
Yes.
In these past few years, you know, just politically, pandemically.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting that it's pretty much the exact same vibe of the Motionless song, which, you know, isn't too different from the song America from many years ago. Yes. So it is interesting that, you know, now we have, you know, it's not limited to one artist. They share like similar sentiments of, again, like I mentioned, you know, America kind of paints itself around the world as like this big powerhouse and, you know, the best country. But then you have songs like this that are just like, you know, it's not necessarily the reality, and the truth is there's a lot darker.
Especially in this song specifically. This song specifically with the line, paraphrasing because I don't remember it exactly, but it went like, you might be woke but not awake.
I like it. I like that. I don't think I noticed that one.
Oh, it was very much toward the beginning. Speaking of the beginning, what I don't know what instrument that was. I don't know if it felt like a fiddle or maybe a banjo, but this is going to sound weird, but I heard like Irish music almost. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I would have to listen to it again. I do remember we both like kind of made an expression when we were watching the beginning of it. Not a bad one, but just like
an
Okay.
interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to listen to it again.
Yeah, it felt,
But
I don't know if Irish is the right word, but it felt like Irish or Celtic. And I only say that because I know there's another Shinedown song off their album Amaryllis called I'm Not All Right that gives me very similar vibes, for lack of a better word, with that air quotes Irish music.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I don't know that song, but I mean, what you said the title is what?
I'm Not All Right.
Okay. Well, even that in itself, if they're trying to, tie that song into this one, I think that would make sense.
Maybe, but I don't think they don't seem like they would be related.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this doesn't feel like related to anything. Like, a big thing with Motionless is a lot of songs had partners, for lack of a better word. So I was reading the Genius lyrics, and there was little blurbs of what Chris said about them. And he said, like, oh, Sign of Life and Cause of Death are related. Werewolf and Porcelain are related. And then obviously Burned at Both Ends 2 to Burned at Both Ends 1. But I don't see a lot of this in this album for them. But final score, America Burning, 8 out of 10.
I am going to say my final thoughts are Happy 4th of July ? It's a good day to be British, and I give this a 7 out of 10.
I forgot you're British. Your opinion doesn't matter on this song. Anyway, moving on to our next interlude, and I'm interested to go into this one based off of what you've told me. We have our next interlude, Do Not Panic, followed by our next song, A Symptom of Human Being. I hate to admit it, Nicole, but you're definitely right. After viewing this interlude in the new context of what you've presented, it very much is a distraction from the rest of the album. Although I still stand by what I think me and you both said, where a lot of these don't really line up with the song that comes after them. This one, although this one and the last one, I feel like were more exceptions, because the final words of Do Not Panic, the interlude, is just a symptom of being programmed, which led into a symptom of being human being. So you get that dichotomy there.
Yes.
And it's interesting because they're not contradicting these interludes. Shinedown is not contradicting the interview with, most of the time, with loud, in-your-face stuff. Like, they've done it. They have, like, Planet Zero, Dead Don't Die, America Burning, all that. But there's also, they're combating a lot of these interludes with slower songs. Like, looking back on just their discography as a whole, this album has a lot more slower songs / ballads than I think any other Shinedown record has had. Which is interesting because in that interview I mentioned before, of where Brent Smith was talking about the themes of this album, he also mentioned that sonically they wanted to go back to earlier Shinedown earlier Shinedown sound. And I think they're doing this a little well, but in a different context because they have that slow songs, that abundance of slow songs, I should say. None of that related to the song at all. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
What did you think of the song? Because I have one note and one note only, but I'll save it for later.
Well, I really enjoyed how the interlude introduced the song. I also, my main note about that, of course, was the ending of it, but also I liked the line was, what you see is not reality, which further proves the idea of, it's like, no, like everything that the band is saying and the ideas that they're introducing to you through their music, don't pay attention to that, it's not real. And definitely shows, like, how the interludes in itself is its own represents some sort of character. It's like, you know, don't pay attention to the meanings of the song.
Which is very interesting, the way you worded that, because in the past, outside of this album, rock and metal music has gotten that reputation of the like, whatever this band is saying is don't listen to them, it's bad, it's whatever. And so it's interesting that you worded it like that. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was interesting. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but it's I noticed that connection between what you said.
I mean, it's true in especially like the rock and rock related genres. There's a lot of times where people will just kind of assume that any, you know, music that's similar to that, especially the songs where there's like vocals that are screaming, they think like, oh, those lyrics can't be of any value.
Right.
What a lot of people do is, if there's songs that have screaming vocals, they will just assume that they're screaming about negativity or promoting, you know, bad things like drugs and drinking and stuff like that. And then there's obviously not the reality of it.
You often get, I will say two things. One, some people will just go as far as, I can't understand them, they must not be talking about anything at all. And also, I've noticed this, and a lot of people hate on it, the current metal rock industry for this. A lot of hard rock and metal nowadays is a lot more about mental health. Like the pain that maybe a singer would be going through. And there are bands like Citizen Soldier where they've made it that their entire mission to advocate for mental health awareness and stuff like that. And then, of course, every band has a couple songs where it's like, I feel like I'm dying and all that. And it is a interesting point that maybe we could talk about another time, because there was this one YouTuber I watched and he was ranking albums of the year. And a big point in a lot of things he says is, oh, it's all the woe is me stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I before I heard that, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's good music and it could be helpful. But now since he said that, I always find myself looking back. I'm like, he is right. It is a lot of music. It's a lot of musical themes we hear today, but that wouldn't necessarily make it a bad thing. Did this have anything to do with the song that just played? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but definitely just like, no, it goes along with the interlude of what you see is not reality, the line that I was referencing, where it's just like, some people just want you to look the other way because they make assumptions about the music, in the same way that whatever the interlude represents just wants people to look away and be like oh, like this is like rock music, nothing good could come out of it, just look the other way and everything will be fine. And the line of Symptom of being programmed definitely gives off the vibe of whatever the interlude represents is just trying to program the audience as if they were, you know, machines, of just like, no, think the other way. And so I do really enjoy how the interlude introduced the following song. When I was listening to the lyrics, I was like, oh wait, like it's actually like pretty sweet song of saying like everyone has their own struggles and that's just a shared part of the human experience. What I did like was that it was a pretty emotional song in its own way, and they were not afraid to throw in like what I described as funky language in this song.
I'm sure we're thinking of the same thing.
I believe we are. And I will let you get to that because I believe what you're going to reference I wrote down in quotes. But another thing that I could say before we could say that is I feel like it kind of belongs in a movie.
Yes.
Of like this moment of like realization.
Very much a song for a soundtrack. Yes.
And I really liked the outro of it. I thought it was
Yes.
very sweet and calm. And those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah. And I only have one thing to say about Symptom of Being Human. Lunatic Ball, bonus points, 9 out of 10.
I have Lunatic Ball written in quotes. It's the first thing that I have. I will give this an 8.5 out of 10.
If I ever go back and try to graduate high school, that is my senior quote. But I think we have a while to get there. I still have to do 1st through 11th grade.
Good luck with that.
Yes, thank you. Anyway, moving on to the next song, which is a word that I've only heard recently, as mentioned before, thanks to Panic at the Disco, Hope. I'm going to admit, I missed most of that lyric video because I was looking something up that I wanted to talk about. But I did notice this was the only lyric video that had the song credits.
I did as well.
Yeah, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But what I was looking up was the meaning of the phrase, not a 4-letter word, because I've heard that before, and I never understood what it meant. Apparently, in the English language, a lot of swear words, or what I like to call them, subtraction points, because they can't be played on the radio words, are 4 letters. Not going to give examples because I'm not going to say them. But yes, so the meaning of blank is not a 4-letter word is meaning like it's not a vulgar or censored word, which is what they're saying here. They're basically saying here, hope is not a bad thing, which I thought was very cool. But I also felt this song really delivers on a song being titled Hope. I find it to be one of the most hopeful songs on this entire album. Yet another slow song too, which was interesting. A majority of this album so far has been on the slower side, which is not a bad thing, but it's interesting. And also, this along with Daylight, so far, Daylight being another single, are probably the 2 songs I related to the most out of this album. 9 out of 10.
I also noticed that this was another of like the more calm songs on the album. But I don't dislike it. I feel like it matched the vibe of the lyrics. But coming into this only knowing the title track, it wasn't really something that I was expecting, but I'm enjoying it. I would say that I do really like that this song is after the previous one, The Symptom of Being Human, because I feel like the lyrics of them kind of bleed into one another, in the sense of the previous song mentions the struggle of like human experience, and the things that they reference, it's kind of like the next one's like, oh well, what do you do, like how do you come out of that in a way. And I like that it's kind of saying, universally humans experience struggles, but there's still hope for humanity. And that's how I kind of interpreted the placement of those 2 songs. And I really enjoy that they were placed beside each other.
It does seem like they might share a connection in terms of placement and stuff.
And I will give this one a 7 out of 10.
Fair enough. Moving on, we're nearing the end of the album. We just passed the halfway mark. It is a 20-track album, including the interlude. So we have another interlude and a song, A More Utopian Future, followed by Clueless and Dramatic.
You.
Maybe I woke up on the wrong side of my luxurious king-size bed this morning, but a lot of these lyric videos are hard to look at. they very much have a lot going on, and it is almost giving me a headache to stare at them for an extended period of time and trying to read the lyrics. I think if this was just a music video and this was the visuals for it, it would be fine. But the fact that I'm also trying to pick out these words in between this mess of stuff is making it a little headache inducing. And that has nothing to do with the songs at all, but just the imagery they chose is, like I said, hard to look at.
I mean, I feel like in itself, I mean, I definitely have to agree. I suppose, if anything, it matches the vibe of the song.
Very much.
Because I feel like you've commented on that mostly on the ones that are a little bit more like
the heavier songs.
The heavier songs. Whereas like the more calm ones have like, you know, better readability. So I think that was definitely a choice, but you know, in trying to pay attention to some of the lyrics, you know, it's a lot going on for sure.
Very much. They are, it doesn't seem like it, but they very much are balancing out the amount of heavy songs and the amount of slower songs. And I've gotten to a point in the album where I don't know what's next. Aside from the 2 other singles that we have yet to listen to, I never know what kind of song to expect next, especially the ones after the interludes, because they've done both heavy and slower songs after interludes, which I find very nice, because going off of your theory of distraction, they're using both violence, for lack of better words to describe the heavy songs, and peace in order to combat these automated messages. Going off of that, I've noticed a lot more heavier use in automated voices in songs in the past couple of years. We saw it with Meltdown and Cyberhex for Motionless in White, but even before that, Bring Me the Horizon, Parasite Eve had that too in the pre-chorus. And Bring Me the Horizon, again, much longer ago, but Mantra did the same thing with Meltdown, where the final word of the chorus was automated voice. But there seems, at least noticing a pattern, there seems to be more use of it nowadays.
I think a lot of it is also the automated voices are also becoming kind of synonymous with some sort of like higher power or something trying to control others. And
just because it's so lifeless, that's why it works so well. And
the irony in that is like, you know, if there's a robotic voice, it feels like there's no meaning behind it, and then that reminded me of kind of like leaders in a way, just like sending an automated message. It doesn't really have a lot of substance to it.
Right.
It reminds me of when I would get like a letter of some sort, and you know how you're supposed to like say sincerely and then a space and then the name and then the person signs it, but someone's signing one copy and then they photocopy it so that you get a photocopied signature. It's almost in the same way, in a strange way, similar to like, you know, oh, we're gonna simply control these people. Let's just type some words into a computer and have some like robotic voice say it, and then they'll believe it.
I'm waiting for the day where we're reacting to a song, and there's an automated voice, and all it says is, "We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty," and that's the chorus.
Maybe that's how the album will conclude.
Maybe
that's what it's all about.
And I feel like we've made a mistake combining the interludes with songs, because we really do have a lot to talk about them, because there is a much more deeper meaning within these interludes than I've noticed in other albums that have multiple interludes, which I find interesting.
I mean, in this one too, we're discovering, you know, so in the interlude, it immediately references Hope, which is the song before it, and then you notice now, because we referenced before that the interlude and the songs didn't really seem like they went together, and as the album progresses, they're becoming, you know, closer involved with one another, because now the interlude is referencing the previous song. So again, if it's its own character, we know that it's paying attention to the activity of the band. And so they're paying more attention to the messages that the band is promoting in the songs. And they're trying to like change the thoughts of the audience, the same audience that the band is singing to.
Right.
And what I like also is in the beginning of the song, Clueless and Dramatic, is there's words like change the rules and think for yourself. And in that, now not only do we know that the voice of the interlude is paying attention to Shinedown, but the band is now paying attention to the interlude.
Yes.
So now the two are so closely connected, and it definitely feels like a great progression of a story, which I am so impressed about. I didn't doubt the band, but I didn't know coming into this that there would be this much bigger thing.
Very much,
and this whole story going along. And I definitely could see that the two are much closer connected.
Yes. And I noticed there were codes in this one too, and I feel like at this point they probably do mean something, and they're not just there for effect. Like if you decoded them, they probably said something. That was just a little comment I noticed. But another thing, you won't know this because you don't listen to them much, but one of the lines went something like staring down the barrel of a 45, which is a direct reference to their first album, almost word for word of the chorus of the song called 45. And I like when bands do this a lot. Ice Nine Kills, in their 2018 album, The Silver Scream, during their song Rocking the Boat, they worked in all the titles of their previous albums into the song, which I thought was cool. And we saw it a lot with Motionless in White's newest album, stuff like Red, White, and Boom. They referenced America with the line Home of the Free, Sick and Depraved, which was a line from the other one. And I do like when bands do this, but the thing is, you can't overdo it. You can't reference something in enough songs. And it reminds me of a song that I've been working on. I'm not going to say the name of it, but where I'm shaping the lyrics around a lot of the sayings me and my friends have. That's all I'm saying on that. I don't want to give too much away.
Of course not. I enjoy that. And
I did too.
What I do like too is that you're right, when you try to push a reference to another song, it could be really obvious and like kind of takes away from the song. But that's what I love about, like, I didn't know that reference. And so if you're a listener of a band, you notice little things like that. And I appreciate when artists do stuff like that. But again, not overdo it. And I mean, I don't know as much, but I feel like they didn't, because I didn't notice that they were pushing something like that, which means that they did a good job.
Exactly. Final score?
Give me a moment. What's yours? Did you
Mine
give it?
Mine was going to be an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Fair enough. And our next song up is Sure Is Fun. And if you think listening to us reacting to this album sure is fun too, feel free to subscribe to our channel and also drop a like. It would help me out immensely, and it also gives me motivation to continue dealing with Nicole.
Alright, I could take it.
Well, that sure was fun. I rather enjoyed that song. It was a nice mix of playful, but at the same time, we're all going to die. I will say, though, at the start of the song, I had to make sure nothing else was playing, because the music and the melody of the lyrics almost didn't match. But that was just the verses. Once the chorus hit, it felt more cohesive. And I'm not saying either one was bad. I like the music and I like the melody and the lyrics, but they felt disconnected to an extent.
Mm-hmm. I saw your face during that, and you were like, you know, it seems like you were definitely questioning it a little bit, and I feel like again that's done on purpose because the beginning of it has, you know, kind of confusing messages of like, you know, wait, what is the message of the song so far? What are they trying to get at? Where when they begin the chorus, they're kind of addressing that. Like they're kind of hooking the listener with the beginning of like, wait, what's going on kind of thing. And I liked that. I think you just described it as like kind of playful. I don't know how to really describe the sound of the beginning of the song, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of fun. I think that was the point, because it sure is fun.
Yeah, very tongue-in-cheek.
Haha. And yeah, I wrote funky sound. I enjoyed it.
I did too. We'll take off points for swearing words, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. They're not as prevalent in this album as they were in Scoring the End of the Earth, but they are two very different bands. And I also say, visually, this is my favorite lyric video.
I liked it too.
Yes.
I did as well. I didn't seem as, like, in your face.
Yes, very much. But also the music wasn't as in your face either.
Mm-hmm. But I like also, though, this one wasn't as slow as the slower songs on the album. But
wasn't as fast as the other songs.
So I really liked the playful balance of, you know, the album in this one song.
Yeah, this was a very nice song. And final scores, unfortunately, because of swearing, I'm gonna have to knock it down. 6 seems too low. Let's make it a 7 out of 10.
Well, then there's Nicole's scale of it gets more points for swearing, so I will give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Honestly, though, I would not give the song more points just for swearing. I did like, though, I felt like it was an artistic choice where it wasn't in your face.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't overdone.
That. It would be really out of place at this point in the album for there to be just like...
There's been a few instances, but overall they've been clean.
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
that's what I thought.
Moving on, the third single off the album we have right now is Daylight. It is amazing how a song can change when you're familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a single released about a month ago, before the album came out. But even before that, they played this live as at the concert I went to, almost as a apology for delaying the album. And it was weird because it was just a song to me, totally new, when they played it live. Then I heard it, and it would still felt like a completely unknown song. But now, after hearing it a bunch of times since then, I can follow the structure of the song, and it's almost a different experience than the first time I've heard it. Especially me, who looks for the structure in the song, like verse, chorus, pre-chorus, so forth. It's weird when you can pick that stuff out versus, I'm hearing everything for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've grown on this song. Like, each song has not been, per se, the I love it immediately kind of song. It's the song that it's good, and then a few listens later, be like, okay, I really like this song now. And I really do like the song. Especially, like I said before, After Hope, this is the song I probably relate to most off the album. Since we've heard so far, we still have 3 actual songs left, and one of them is also a single. But a line like, it's amazing what the hard times can reveal, who shows up, who walks away, and who's for real. that's a nice. I really like that lyric because it is a very deep meaning that a lot of people can connect to.
Mm-hmm. I agree. My main note was that this was definitely a very emotional song.
Yes. It almost felt like a little disconnected from the album. It felt like a more personal song.
Mm-hmm.
Like how Wake Me Up When September Ends was disconnected from American Idiot as a whole. That's what this song feels like.
Mm-hmm. And I also enjoyed the tone of the song. Again, it was on the slower side,
Right.
but at the same time it wasn't like, oh, this is a slow song. Like, it had elements of, like, it was a little bit faster. Like, it wasn't an aggressive, it was far from like a more aggressive song.
Right.
And I liked that it gave the vibes of it being like very genuine. And yeah, I enjoyed it too.
8 out of 10 for me.
I will give it a 7.5.
Okay, next up, we have another interlude and another song. This is a Warning, followed by The Saints of Violence and Innuendo. I forgot to mention this last time, and so I'll say it here before I forget. I mentioned before how one of the interludes, I believe it was the second one titled Welcome, is the song the band walk out to during their live performance. However, I think now it's a combination of all the interludes together that they walked out to, because I remember it being quite a long speech, but I'd also have to go back and see if that's true. That being said, it is still carrying that story of control that you mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And I'm not too sure of the connection between This Is a Warning and Saints of Violence and Innuendo. But that being said, I also know Saints of Violence and Innuendo more because it was the second single released. And so I know it lyrically by heart. Mm-hmm. And I will say, it's got a nasty guitar. Absolutely beautiful. And also, I don't know if you noticed this at the end of the second verse, but he holds out that note for at least like 7 to 10 seconds, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And my only question is, how? Bonus points for that, because he does it twice.
Feels different.
However, minus points for swearing. And I don't know if I should count them as 4 separate point subtractions, because it is technically the same line 4 times. At the same time, it is there 4 times.
Alas.
But minus points nonetheless. 7.5 out of 10.
Well, I again think that the interlude, I mean, it's literally called This Is a Warning.
Right.
It continues the story for sure. I felt like this one was a little bit more like dancey than the other ones, and like
it did
the
feel
music
like that.
itself was kind of upbeat, which is, you know, very contradictory to the words, which are like, you know, we're gonna turn you over and we're gonna kill you if you don't comply. But they play like very upbeat music to kind of mask the message of that, which again follows the theme. So that in itself was very contradictory, and I realized that even the phrase itself, Saints of Violence, is interesting because, you know, saints is like, you know, this individuals that can do
very much
wrong, and then there's violence, and that's the opposite of it. And so in that, I think again the band is addressing the voice of the interludes, saying, you know, those in charge kind of think like they're doing what's right, and so they would think themselves to be saints and, you know, doing no wrong, where they're actually advertently or inadvertently causing violence and harm to other people.
Right.
And so I feel like that does connect the two, but it's just further like the band is responding to whatever power is in the interludes. Speaking of which, though, they mentioned groupthink in this song.
Yes,
and
quite
that
a lot.
definitely reminded me of what's often mentioned doublethink in the book 1984. And this entire time I was thinking, it's kind of like Big Brother-esque kind of voice,
Right.
and we're watching over you, and we're going to make you think certain things, and you're going to comply to how we want you to be, and if you don't, we're going to kill you. And so I think, I wanted to mention that, but I didn't know if I should draw like a comparison between.
I think it's a fair comparison.
But I was waiting for like, is there going to be like the right moment? And I think in the pairing of these two songs, that was the perfect time to bring that up, because it definitely is, again, with the dancey music, like, hey, like, just this is your leader speaking, no big deal, but if you don't pay attention and do what we want you to do, you're not going to live much longer. And that's
I will take your word for it too. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I will take your word for it, though, because I've only read Animal Farm. I have not gotten around to 1984.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of elements of, that, just
Based
overall
on my
a dystopian story.
Yeah, based on my understanding of what 1984 is, I am getting those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Final score?
We could give it an 8. 8 of 10.
Fair enough. Next up, Army of the Underappreciated. And I think these two songs might be connected just based on the similarity in their names. Now that's what I call shinedown. 8 out of 10. I have nothing else to say.
All right. Well, I guess I will say more than you. You kind of went into it thinking that it would be some sort of response to the previous song, or at least you led me to believe that, and I feel like it definitely was. But like the lyrics were a lot of like a message of not giving up or holding back from the saints of violence that control.
Yes.
I really liked this song. It reminded me a little bit of a song Move by Pretty Vicious. And I felt like there were a lot of elements of Green Day in that song. And I felt like they were more like, this was more, I can't speak too much on the punk genre, but I felt like there were a lot more elements of punk in this song.
I heard it a little bit. I heard more, I attributed more to classic Shinedown than punk, but...
Mm-hmm. But that, I mean, more from that.
Right, of course.
But that's some of the elements that I picked up on. I really enjoyed that. I will give that one an 8.5.
Nice. I will say this was another lyric video that was difficult to look at.
Mm-hmm.
The black and white and also flashing this probably was the hardest music video to watch. And this is, I'm sorry, lyric video, which is why I've noticed it, like, Motionless White had Cyberhex and Masterpiece. And I think that's it in terms of music videos. And I understand, like, these take a long time to make. I've made a few myself. But it is very hard to look at some of these lyric videos, which is why I enjoy music videos a little bit more. Because there's that next level story element to it. And don't get me wrong, there can be lyric videos that tell a story, but these ones are very much just imagery to go along with the song.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else to add?
No.
All right. Well, we have our final interlude and our final track, Delete, followed by What You Wanted, to wrap up the album. Here we go. such a shame. They got it wrong. It's full send, Nicole. Full send.
You're not wrong.
But anyway, an interesting conclusion to the album. I liked it. And Delete wrapped up the interlude storyline very well. Very video gamey this time in terms of the sound. But also definitely wrapped it up. You showing like you can't leave, you're showing signs of free will, stuff like that. Those were all connected perfectly. And through multiple listens, I'm sure we can find how the songs connect to each specific interlude.
Yes.
Thank you for agreeing.
I liked that the interlude as well. You know, when they said like signs of, I liked that they mentioned that signs of free will means dysfunction, which is ironic, but again showing that, you know, whoever that is doesn't, you know, really want the best for the audience,
Right.
and wants them to believe in that. And then, so the end of Delete, so the voice kept repeating the word delete, but it kind of sounded like it was fading away or malfunctioning.
Yes.
Which kind of led me to believe that maybe the antagonist didn't necessarily win.
That would be a good message, yes.
And I felt like what you wanted is, well, first of all, they repeat the word goodbye, and I thought it's just like, wow, this is really like they're again paying attention to the storyline, and they're wrapping up a story
right
by doing that. And then of course there's lines like keep the fantasy moving, hope you enjoyed the ride, which was just completely, you know, brings back all of our points earlier of
yours specifically. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's like you're on this journey of like, oh, like just keep listening to who's in charge, and then everything will be okay. But that's why like the word fantasy is also part of it, where, you know, again, whoever the interlude represents is trying to keep up this illusion of like everything's fine, just follow our rules. And the band is like, not quite. And so in calling it a fantasy, they're showing that exactly. I also liked that this song was not incredibly slow.
Yes, but it wasn't incredibly heavy.
It was not. And another one of those songs that's like a balance between the two.
Yeah.
And to conclude an album with that kind of vibe, I really enjoyed. Because there's a lot of albums where many that aren't necessarily conceptual, or like they don't have like stories to go along with it. They just put, oh, we did a slow song and we'll put it at the end. It's still really good, but I kind of like that they did not do that.
Yes.
You end it with an aggressive song for a album that is such a balance between the two. Would have, like, I felt like it wouldn't have matched the vibe as much as what they did end up doing. So I liked that they chose that.
Definitely. I liked it too. The chorus itself, specifically the lyrics of goodbye, so long, see you later, good night, or whatever it said. It said exactly that, actually. Reminded me a lot of the Sound of Music song. I forget exactly what it was, but when they say goodbye in all those languages, felt very reminiscent of that. And the line, the revolution is live, is interesting because that was the name of their tour earlier this year, the one I got to go to with The Pretty Reckless and Diamante. And so to see where this is where that stemmed from, or vice versa, was very interesting. Overall, though, this song specifically a 6 out of 10.
I'd have to agree with that one. A 6.
And moving on to our final thoughts on the album, I very much enjoyed it.
I did too.
And I think I enjoyed it a lot more once you pointed out that the interludes had a purpose in what they were saying. and how they contradicted the actual songs on the album. I think once I looked at it from that perspective, I understood the album more.
Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot happening that's a lot bigger than
Very
just
much,
the
yes.
music in itself. So I'm glad that I looked at it from that perspective. And...
Yeah. On the other hand, I like slow songs, but I prefer a lot more heavier songs, guitars and stuff and all that. Just a little bit more. So the fact that there were so many slow songs here, first impression wise, hurts the final score of the album overall just a little bit, but I'm sure through repeated listens I'll grow into them.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts for you?
I don't know. I think you wrapped it up nicely. This is the first Shinedown album that I've listened to through. I don't know too much of the music, but
That's lame.
I really... Shush.
No.
Anyway, I enjoyed that I had the chance to really sit down and absorb the album as a whole. And, I do appreciate albums that have storylines that go along with them.
Very much. They are some of my favorite albums.
Mm-hmm. And I felt like they intertwine them really beautifully. And I like that you could feel the progression of it throughout the album, and it didn't feel pushed. I felt like it was kind of just an effortless, like, oh, these two things are happening simultaneously, and then as the album goes on, they're closer and closer in relation. And I really appreciate that.
Same here. Final score 7.65 out of 10.
Why so specific? How'd you calculate that?
Mine, all those swearing points.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
I will be giving it a 7 out of 10. It's my score.
Sounds good. Well, everyone, if you enjoyed this video, just like Shinedown said, be sure to like it and subscribe. And let us know what you thought of this album down in the comments below. And we will be back with more Heavy is the Crown content. See you later, everyone.